In this chapter, we're going to talk about implementing hooks inside of a theme. Implementing a hook is something that up until Drupal 7 was reserved for modules only. In Drupal 7 though, there are a handful of hooks that we can implement as in our theme inside of the template.php file in order to alter how things are output on the page or what is output on the page. There are 4 hooks that we can implement in a template.php file in Drupal 7. 2 of those are hook.js alter and hook.css alter. You remember in a previous chapter in this series, we talked about using the Drupal add.js function in order to add JavaScript files to our theme that will get processed by Drupal and added to the page. The same was true for CSS files. We could use Drupal add CSS to add CSS files to the page. When we do that, Drupal is creating a big array that is a list of all the JavaScript or all the CSS files that are going to be output on the page. It keeps that array and then uses that when later on the theme layer calls Drupal get.js or Drupal get.css to take that array and turn it into the actual HTML that's output in the head of our theme. What we can do in our theme or in a module by implementing something like hook.js alter or hook.css alter is modify that list of files before it gets output. So we have the ability to alter the list of CSS files, for example, that are included by another module or another theme. Let's take a look at something that we might do with this. In our 960 robots theme, we currently don't really have any reason that we need to override the list of CSS files that's being output on the page. But as an example, let's take a look at what we could do. When viewing the HTML source for the front page of our site, you can see all of the CSS files that are getting included on this page. Up here at the top, we start to see CSS files that are included by modules. So the system module is adding one system.menus.css or system.messages.css. As we can continue down the list, you can see other CSS files added by modules, node.css, search.css, and so forth. And then finally, down here at the bottom, we can see the CSS files that are added by our theme, the 960.css and main.css files. What if, inside of my theme, I wanted to tell Drupal to not add this system.menus.css file, for example? That's where hook.css alter comes into play. We can use this hook in order to alter the list of CSS files that are going to be added to the page. Let's take a look at doing that as an example of implementing a hook inside of our 960 robots theme. So the first thing I'm going to do is figure out the name of the hook that I want to implement. In this case, I want to implement hook.css alter. So I'm just going to copy this name here. So sort of the signature for this function, I'm going to copy that and switch over to the code for our theme. And inside of our template.php file, I'll create a new function with the name that I just copied from api.drupal.org. And what I'm going to do here is replace the word hook with the name of my theme. So this is similar to how we made overrides for theme functions before, where we would take the word theme and replace it with the name of our theme. Now we're going to replace the word hook here with the name of our theme. Now, when Drupal invokes this CSS alter hook, when it says, hey, are there any modules or themes that would like to alter the list of CSS files? It will find ours by virtue of this naming convention and call our 960 robots CSS alter hook in conjunction with all of those implemented by other themes and other modules that are currently enabled. To see what's inside of this CSS array, we can use the kpr function, and we'll just print it out. I switch back over to my site. I'll need to empty the cache in order for this to show up, since I've added a new hook implementation now. I'll clear all caches, and now we get the printout at the top of the screen, and we can take a look at that, and it shows us all of the CSS files that are being added to our page. There's this system.menus.css, for example. And all of the information that was provided by the Drupal add CSS function call when this file was added is here as well. We could make changes to any of that. What we want to do is actually just exclude this from the page. So the easiest thing to do would be get the key of the system.menus.css file in this CSS array, like so. I'll copy that, and then back over in our template.php file, I'm just going to use the unset function and say, remove this element from the CSS array. Switch back to our site, and I hit refresh, I also removed that KPR, so it's no longer going to print out the list up at the top of the screen. But when I view the source of this page now, you'll notice up at the top, that file, system.menus.css, is no longer included on the page. So this is an example of how I might remove a CSS file from the page. I could also do things like change the order that the CSS files appear in. I might say replace that system.menus.css file with my own version of that same file. If I had a different CSS that I'd like to use for styling menus throughout Drupal, a bunch of different things that you can do with that. The same is then true for hook.js alter. Inside of hook.js alter, if we look at the documentation for that, you get a variable named JavaScript. That variable is just an array of all of the JavaScript files that are going to be included on the page. And it gives you the opportunity to modify that list. So a practical example there might be you'd like to replace the version of jQuery that's being used on your Drupal site. You could use hook.js alter to say, don't use the jQuery library that comes with Drupal core, but use my version instead. This is an example of two of the hooks that you can implement inside of a theme in Drupal 7. Hook.js alter and hook.css alter. You do so by finding the hook name, in this case, hook.js alter, copying that into your template.php file, and replacing the word hook here with the name of your theme. So in our case, 960 robots _ js _ alter would implement this hook inside of our theme. In the following chapter, we'll take a look at some of the other hooks that you can implement inside of a theme in Drupal 7.